All right, welcome everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order at 6:01. And as we start with every meeting, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm going to explain the agenda format in a little bit, but we are going to start as we had talked about this prior to. We're going to start with public comment. So we were doing that prior to the strategic planning. So anyone that wants to address, we don't have a large crowd here tonight, but anyone that does want to speak, if you could just please come up. We have 15 minutes allocated. We're looking for a few minutes from everyone, and then for the committee, remember, we're just taking the comment. We have the public comment process later in the agenda, and then we can talk about how we want to organize that going forward. So I do see Mr. Kane, so if you could just give us your name, address.
Sean Kane, 31 Forest Street. I actually want to talk about the public comment process. Should I wait until you discuss it?
I would say, why don't you share your feed? It's up to you.
Well, it's interesting because it does kind of pertain to that. I guess I'll just explain my thoughts about public comment and then kind of go from there. But my understanding about public comment, and I think it makes sense that you limit it to a degree at the beginning, because if somebody came in and made a public comment about something that's not on the agenda, and then the committee started to discuss it, obviously that's not a great idea. So allowing people to come in, share their thoughts, and then not responding in a sense, giving some time to think about it between meetings, and then maybe addressing it in the future, that seems appropriate. But in addition to that, I think when there are things on the agenda, I think it makes sense for the public to be able to speak. So if you're discussing whether it's a mask mandate or something else on the agenda, if there's somebody from the public here and they want to make a comment during the discussion of the meeting, to me that's really within the spirit of what a public meeting should be. And obviously people should wait their turn, and maybe they shouldn't speak too much if they're not offering new material and all that stuff. But doesn't seem, it caught me off guard not having the first public comment, like literally on the agenda, and then not being able to speak during the meeting. Those two things to me just feels my own personal opinion about public meetings and that kind of stuff. I'd appreciate if the public comment stays at the beginning of the meeting, and members of the public are able to discuss at appropriate times during the meeting.
Great. Thank you for your public comment. Anyone else? Okay, now we'll close public comment. Okay, the agenda. So we're going to try it this way, and if it doesn't work or it provides more confusion than help, then we won't do it again this way. But in meeting with Jeff, what we were really trying to do was kind of keep the tradition and spirit of every board meeting, committee meeting typically has the same format, right? You have your old business, you have your new business. So we didn't exactly feel completely comfortable completely just throwing that out the window. But one of the things we talked about is, especially with this meeting, and remember we talked about this previously, was we got a lot of things. There's about 19 things we got to try and cover. School's coming back, we got a lot of work to do. We've been doing the planning over the course of the summer. So we wanted to prioritize things kind of in an order that kind of made sense. So if you disregard the Roman numerals and you just look at the numbers, the plan is basically to go from number 1, which was the agenda review, to number 2, public comment. Then we're going to do the meeting minutes for June 9th, which is number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, and then we're just follow the numbers. So we're literally just going to follow the numeric order to try and make sure that we prioritize things, and that way, even if we're taking things out of order, so to speak, the thinking was in future meetings, at least there's transparency with the committee because you understand what we're taking out of order and why. Remember, because that always happens. Like you get to the superintendent's report, and then it's like, well, we're not going to do that because we're going to do this. We'll still have some flexibility. Great example is tonight, Dr. Jones is doing the orientation. It's hard for him to be at both places, so at some point we're going to probably have to slot him in for a handbook conversation, right? But that's the thinking. So if you can kind of bear with us this meeting, see how it works. We'll kind of check in because there is a lot of content on the agenda. We'll probably check in a couple hours if we're still going strong and just see, hey, do we want to pause here and have another meeting in 2 weeks? Jeff has asked, and I think I would support. Let's not meet on the first day of school, if possible, next Wednesday, because that's just a rough day for everyone around here. And they need to focus on everyone else, not us. But we can certainly then have that next meeting, whether it's the 8th or 15th. But that's kind of the thinking. So in scanning the agenda, hopefully that makes sense. If you see anything that you think is really important that we need to move up, let us know. But we will conclude with 17, 18, and 19. So even if we don't get to everything, we'll make sure that we hear from the subcommittee reports, because we need to do that. We'll make sure that we set our next meeting date, and we do have to have an executive session. So just keep that in mind as we're kind of going through. We're going to have to spend some degree of time in an executive session tonight. So that was the thinking with the agenda. Everyone reasonably okay? Is there anything that you see as a higher number that you think we need to move up? Because we can do that now, or you want to try it this way. And again, just let us know afterwards. If this is confusing and it doesn't work and it doesn't create the transparency that it's intended, just let us know. We won't do it again and kind of stick with it. Okay, so we're now moving on to number 3, which is the meeting minutes for June 9th. I get a motion.
Motion to accept.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? We have Beth abstaining, so. All right, number 4, meeting minutes of June 23rd.
Motion to accept.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Michelle, you got Beth? Great. Number 5, meeting minutes of June 30th. Can I get a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Got it. Okay. So we're now going to move on to number 6, which is COVID, and Jeff is going to try and update us as best he can on everything that's going on with reopening.
So, thank you, Chris. So, forwarded out this afternoon, I received a notification at 3:35 this afternoon. A message went out to the community, close to quarter of 4, that the commissioner has mandated masks in school through October 1st. So I'm going to read that mask requirement publicly. All of our residents, or all of our members of our community who are in school should have gotten that. Let me back up a little bit. Last week, we voted 6-4 to follow DESI regs. On Friday, I received an email from the Mass Association of School Superintendents, Tom Scott, about Friday morning around 7:30 to be on the lookout for a call from the commissioner before noon. I received a notification from the commissioner's office at 10:15 that there was a Zoom call at 10:45. On that Zoom call, he told superintendents that he was going to go to the Board of Education and ask for permission on Tuesday during a special board meeting to have the authority to exercise the right to mask students for public safety from September, immediately until October 1st, and the stipulation around October 1st was a vaccination percentage. He left that phone call, asked us to embargo that information until he did a press release. I think I got a press release at 11:15 from Fox 25 that the commissioner had spoken, and then I got information out to the community. So this is flowing quickly. I watched the Board of Education meeting yesterday. The board voted 10-1 to support the commissioner in the mask mandate. I was anxiously awaiting communication from DESI yesterday afternoon to get something out to the public, because I got an influx of calls both from board members, from coaches, from principals. What do? We have orientations, we have open houses. Is a mask mandate in effect? The mask mandate didn't go into effect until 4 o'clock today. So let me read what I got today, which I share with the community. At a special meeting of the Board of Education, Board of Elementary and Secondary Education Board on August 24th, 2021, the board voted to declare exigent circumstances pursuant to student learning time regulation 603 CMR 27.08 parentheses 1, and authorize Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education to require masks for public school students ages 5 and above and staff in all grades through at least October 1st, 2021. The mask requirement is an important additional measure to keep students safe in school at this time. Consistent with the authority by the board and after consulting with medical experts and state health officials, the commissioner is implementing the following requirements. Effective immediately. Public school students ages 5 and above and staff in all grades are required to wear masks indoors in school, except as noted below. Masks are not required when outdoors. All visitors are expected to wear a mask in school buildings. The mask requirement will be in place until at least October 1st, 2021. The Commissioner will revisit the requirement in the near future to revise it as warranted by public health data. Masks should cover an individual's nose and mouth. For more information appropriate to mask use, please see, and it's a CDC website. It is strongly recommended that students younger than 5 also wear a mask in school. That is not a requirement at this point. Students and staff who cannot wear a mask for medical reasons and students who cannot wear a mask for behavioral reasons are exempted from this requirement. Face shields may be an option for students with medical or behavioral needs who are unable to wear a mask or face covering. Transparent masks may be the best option for both teachers and students in classes for deaf and hard of hearing students. The mask requirement applies when students and staff are indoors at school, except when eating, drinking, or during mask breaks. Mask breaks may occur throughout the course of the day. If feasible, breaks should occur when the windows are open or students are outdoors. As a reminder, meals and outdoor recess provide built-in mask breaks for students and staff. Masks may also be removed indoors when necessary to participate in elective classes, such as the use of wind instruments and band. When traditional masks cannot be worn, districts should consider additional mitigations, such as the use of instrument masks, masks with a slit or hole for the mouthpiece, or bell covers, along with physical distancing or outdoor classes as feasible. Masks are required for any sports-related activity for student athletes and coaches when indoors, in alignment with guidance provided by the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. Masks should be provided by students and/or family, but disposable masks should be made available by the school for students who need them. By federal public health order, all students and staff are required to wear a mask on school buses, and I throw in vans, because we do take vans. Whether and when a student should be disciplined for failure to wear a mask is a local decision guided by the district's student discipline policy and the particular facts. Districts should consult with their legal counsel to address this matter. Districts should provide written notice to students and families about expectations and potential consequences, and are encouraged to use a progressive discipline approach. The mask requirement includes an exemption for students who cannot wear a mask due to medical conditions or behavioral needs. Further, some students with disabilities may need additional supports to wear a mask and may need to be accommodated. Districts are encouraged to consider and implement alternatives before resorting to disciplinary exclusion. Keeping students connected with school is especially important this fall as students return to school after a challenging school year. As provided by the student learning time regulations, each district must submit a plan confirming their health and safety procedures are consistent with the mask requirement. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education will provide districts with a survey link on August 27, 2021, through which they can confirm they are implementing a mask requirement. Submissions of these survey responses will be required no later than Friday, September 3rd, 2021, and will satisfy the plan requirement. After October 1st, 2021, if a school demonstrates a vaccination rate of 80% or more of students and staff in the school, then vaccinated individuals in that school would no longer be subject to the DESE mask requirement. DESE will provide additional information to districts in the coming weeks in preparation for the October 1 date, including how to demonstrate the 80% vaccination rate threshold. That's what I received today. I sent this exact document out to everybody in the community. What I want to tell the community is this board, this superintendent didn't mandate this policy. This is now the Board of Education has authorized, and the Board of Education supersedes all of us right now, this directive. It's a mask mandate by the Commissioner of Education, and we're expected to follow that. I am asking parents, if they agree or disagree, to help us keep with the policy that's put in place by the Commissioner. I expect we had a great year last year. We had a mask mandate last year. We had 0 issues with students around discipline and masks. Sometimes it was just this, and I'm putting it down below my nose if you can't see me, and just asking kids to pick it up. Please help us, help you, help everyone in having a successful opening, and this is the direction that I've been provided as a mandate. We will talk to principals. We will have more information coming out, but as you see here, there are things that are ever evolving. You asked about before we started the meeting, we talked a little bit about how do we get the vaccination rate. That hasn't been provided. Being sarcastic right now, I'm probably going to get it September 29th. But as it comes out, I will communicate with the community. I'm asking the community to help us as we open the school year. We know it was a challenging year last year. I think we did a great job. We got kids back on April 5th last year. We finished strong. We expected to come in opening like a 2019 opening. That hasn't happened. Right now, there's orientations going on in open houses, and kids are excited to come back to school. Let's keep that momentum going, and let's keep kids safe and follow the directives of the Commissioner of Education. Last week, I updated the community, and the last update I had on vaccination rate, and I will tell you right now, it hasn't been updated. I haven't got another update, but I just want to remind the community, for our population that the Commissioner is addressing, 12 to 15, Hanson had a 39% rate of vaccination last week. From ages 16 to 19, they had a 63% vaccination rate. For the town of Whitman, the 12 to 15 had a vaccination rate of 50%, and the other group of 16 to 19 was 63. So that doesn't meet the 80% threshold. If needed, I will work with both fire departments and our physicians that they connect with to offer vaccinating clinics so that we can hit that 80% rate if needed. We will work collaboratively with them to make sure that we can hit that threshold if needed. And how we get that data, I will share with you once I get it from the Commissioner. But that's what I have as far as a COVID update. We are masked, as everyone sees here now. We have mask signs going up, and we will continue to try to educate the community with this change from last week.
Chris, you had a question?
I did.
Comment?
Could you remind me when that was as of when, Jeff? For the statistics, you get the percentages?
So that was last week, right before school committee last week. The Needham Public Schools worked with a group of Harvard grad student interns to do this.
All right.
I have a listing, and I can share with the committee, of every city and town in the Commonwealth that's under the state average. The state average for vaccinations for the age group of 12 to 15 is 63%, and 67% for 16 through 19. So Hanson's a little bit under in the 12 to 15 range. Whitman's a little bit under, but they're both around the range for 16 and 19. There are towns on here that are not listed because they go over the state average. There are towns on here such as Amherst, which includes Pelham. They have an 80% vaccination rate of 12 to 15, but a 16% vaccination rate of 16 to 19. So it ranges, and I can share that with the committee. It's not a public document, so I can't just throw it out there. I don't know who authorized, but I can share with the committee.
I just had a second part, if I could, Chris. I don't expect you to know, Jeff, but I'm just asking because I can anticipate that people will be curious about this. The sentence, the last paragraph. As of October 1st, 2021, if a school demonstrates a vaccination rate of 80% or more of students and staff in the school, then vaccinated individuals in that school will no longer be subject to the DESE mask requirement. Any insight into that?
That question, if you watched the Board of Ed meeting yesterday, two members of the board, one who voted in the affirmative and one who voted in the negative, asked the Commissioner about that number and how he's going to get that number, and he didn't speak to that, and I don't have information on that.
So the way I read this, I'm not talking about getting to the 80% necessarily. Mm-hmm. I'm saying if and when we do that, however that's determined, what about the people that are unvaccinated?
To me, the way I read this is that the mask mandate will remain in effect for all unvaccinated students and staff indefinitely, or until something changes, and for vaccinated students, that will be relieved. Okay. So right now, the article I just read today is that it looks like the vaccination for 5 to 12-year-olds, they're saying now is going to come out in November. That's what I'm saying. That's what I read today. That could change tomorrow. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not saying that. But I read an article today, because my daughter falls into that category. So I'm anxious to see when that's going to be available. But the way I read this is that our K to 6 kids are going to be masked indefinitely until the vaccination is available, and we can hit a number. That's what I'm interpreting that as.
What about 7 through 12 that aren't vaccinated.
I believe he's going to say if you're not vaccinated, you will need to be.
Okay, yeah.
But the reality is, we're all guessing. Right?
Completely
at some
understand that. I just
your
wanted to get it
point
on the
is spot
table
on.
because-
Get it on the table.
It highlights there's so many unknowns. People can even keep asking the questions, and hopefully the commissioner will answer some of them. Mike, and then
Can we as a district legally ask for a vaccination?
Right now, legally, we probably can, but we haven't set that. Meaning staff-wise, I think as an employer, we can. There's precedent and there's law around that. We have not done that yet. I know the Massachusetts Teachers Association has called for vaccinations for all teachers as a mandate from the governor. The governor has issued an order for all state employees or essential employees to be vaccinated by a certain date. I know certain states have done that. We have not done that as a district, and it hasn't come down from the Commonwealth for educators to fall in that place. We as a district now cannot necessarily legally ask a student for the vaccination. That hasn't been set yet, although we do ask for certain vaccinations. This one has not been put on that approved list yet.
Right.
It's gray. Very honestly, it's gray. I don't know. That might come down. What I did say in our last meeting, which would help us for contact tracing, if you have a vaccinated student, you may, please let our nurse know because it will help us in contact tracing. So if you're vaccinated and you're close to a student, you're not involved in that quarantine or testing area, okay? So anybody that wants to provide that information to us, we'd accept that, but we don't have that mandate and we don't have that expectation yet of providing the data. What I do know is that our both boards of health can give us these numbers that I just shared with you because this is where they got that number. So we'll go to the Board of Health and the Board of Health will say 68% of your students in this age range are vaccinated. I wouldn't be able to identify Conley, Duval, Whitman Middle, Indian Head, Hanson Middle, or the high school. High school is relatively easy in that age group of 16 to 19. So this is all fluid, and it's difficult to be at a public meeting and say, I don't know, but literally I got this 2 hours ago.
I think that's completely reasonable.
You know, and to say that, and I'll go public on this, I'm not happy that this information came out at 3:30 today and it was effective immediately. It put us into a scramble for our orientation tonight, for our school committee meeting tonight. We did it. I've got a great bunch of people, but it put people into a spin. And if I was on the road today, because it came to me, or if I was out of the office at 4 o'clock today, or if I didn't check my email, we'd be behind the eight ball. So the timing of this, will be voiced, I think, from our superintendents to the commissioner. Things that have happened, I've been able to support, but this one put a wrinkle in this. It was a curveball for us. We anticipated something coming yesterday. It didn't come. It came this afternoon, and I appreciate everybody that jumped on board and is supportive. I just went down to check our orientation. All our mentors are masked up and smiling. I can see it in their eyes. They're ready to go. There's a lot of positive energy there, and as I said to the community, let's roll. Let's be positive moving into next Wednesday for an opening.
Don?
To get back to the mandate, it is kindergarten through 12th grade.
Correct.
And it is students, educators, and staff.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Have you heard anything about our preschool in that age group? So that would include, or doesn't include preschool staff, right?
So it
talking
includes
this
all
through.
staff, any staff member. It doesn't include students under 5.
Okay.
Anybody that's in this building that's an adult, whether it be a visitor, a guest, volunteer, a staff member, a teacher, in a school building, you're required to
Yeah,
be
visitors was going to be my question.
Yes.
Does the mandate say visitors, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It covered all adults, and the area that the commissioner left off was students under 5.
And I think he said strongly recommend.
Strongly recommend.
Right.
Correct.
For
Okay.
under 5.
Okay. And
But it covers our post-grads as well. Our post-grads are our 18 to 22-year-olds, so they're adults in the building.
okay. And from our vote last week, in our policy, we don't have any face covering policy, or that was to follow DESI guidance, right?
It was to follow DESI guidance.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that worked out really well, maybe Fred had some forethought, or we just got lucky, either or, we'll take
So
it. We voted to follow the guidance,
And the
and that's how the
guidance
policy
changed.
is set. So if the policy changes again, we or if the guidance changes again, unless we want to do something different, we're good. So one less vote.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have a question. For so the mandate is just for masks though. There's no guidance as far as spacing students out in buildings and things like that.
So great question. The recommendations last week that we shared, there is no social distancing requirement this year. We are asked to do 3 feet or better if we can in spaces that we can. So George and I walked the district this week to see classroom spaces. We are asking teachers, especially in the elementary levels where they chunk kids together in little squares, we've asked them to diamond it out so they're 3 feet apart. We have space, but there is no physical distancing requirement. The 6 feet are kind of out there. They ask us to keep 3 as best we can. Lunches are as is. We are going to work with principals to make sure that we have contact tracing at lunchtime. I think in classrooms we have classroom assigned seats. We're probably going to have that at lunches, but that doesn't mean your student isn't going to be able to choose a friend. Somebody had said something about, masks and no contact. There is contact now. I mean, it's not like last year we were like, oh, stay away. Remember the arm's length away? No, kids can walk together. Kids can give a high five. Wash your hands afterwards, but that is all gone. So it's going to be a different opening than last year. Last year we really talked about, walk in that 6 feet, you had signage everywhere. You're going to have a 2019 opening, but with masks. And I think that's important for the community. Good question to know. The social distancing requirement is very lax. Once you're outside and you're playing sports, you're off mask. I did remind our athletic department and anybody who takes field trips during this month, whether you're on a van or a bus, you're masked up no matter what. I mean, that's a federal guideline. I don't see that going away at this point. They talk about windows being open. We could open windows, but I will say, and Mr. Small said this in facilities today, the iWave unit that we purchased last summer for our classrooms and for our rooftop units is the best device for cleaning the air. We did it well. So I feel our air is very clean as well. So if we do mask breaks, and we will remind our principals and our teachers to do that, especially in our rooms that are air conditioned. And most of our district is air conditioned at this point, except for Whitman Middle School. So we're going to have to concentrate on that area a little bit more. And knowing next week is going to be still a warm week, but we'll remind folks. Chris, you want to grab George?
Oh, sorry, George.
I would just like to add that it's still 6 feet for contact tracing if there's a positive case. So that hasn't changed. So what's changed are some of the parameters of vaccination, masks, things of that nature, but all the nurses have those protocols and we'll be relaying them. But that is really the only thing that is still 6 feet is for contact trace or close contact.
So I think the one thing, so maybe just, we'll go as long as we want on this one, but I think the one thing I would encourage the committee to do is, as you hear questions, keep getting them to Jeff.
Yep.
I mean, we may have to do another FAQ. Remember, we had that last year, things like that. Just keep the questions coming. Just everyone, I think the committee understands it, but for the public, just be patient, right? To Jeff's point, there's questions we just can't answer. Like, we don't have clarity. But ask the questions so that way we can start to think that through. So. You have one more?
For
Yeah.
parents who want to notify the nurse of their child's vaccination status, which nurse, the building nurse
Building
or
nurse.
Lisa, the lead nurse?
The building nurse would be best.
Building.
The building nurse would be best. So if parents want to notify of their child's vaccination status, I think the building nurse would be very appropriate. Okay. They know their students best.
I didn't know if you had one person
No.
to work on that. or
No. On that note, though, not with the building nurse, we did hire an additional nurse this year because, as Lisa Tobin talked about, the test and stay. So it's going to be different this year. If you're exposed to a positive case, it's not the 10 to 14 days quarantine anymore. We have test and stay, which means if a parent says it's okay to test my child, you can be tested. And if you're asymptomatic and test negative, for 5 consecutive days, you're in. Once you test negative, you can go back to class. So the quarantine piece is going to be for symptomatic students, even if they test negative, symptomatic students and or positive cases. So hopefully we can some folks are thinking last year, this is the major shift right now. And we were on a conference call with attorneys today, and they were still looking at last year and the social distancing requirements and things like that. This is ever evolving. So I don't see quarantining large groups anymore. Although you might be a contact trace because it's still 6 feet, and now, you know, we're a little bit closer together. But if you choose to test and stay and you're asymptomatic, that doesn't mean that you're going home for 14 days and sitting and waiting by your computer to come up with things. We have been told too, and DESI guidance is to provide, there is no remote option this year. We're not allowed to give a remote option. However, if you test positive for COVID, just like any other illness, in district, we've asked our teachers and our principals to provide Google Classroom assignments. Just like if you had, as I mentioned last week, you had chicken pox and you were going to be home. We follow the six student protocol per se, if students test positive.
Right.
Just to jump on what you're saying, I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. I would like to see us perhaps draft a letter to DESI, to the commissioner, and ask for a remote option and the funding for a remote option for students that are either their family's immune compromised, or we have to send them home due to close contact, due to them not wanting to test perhaps, or having a positive test. You know, having some sort of an option for the little ones. We should be able to do something, and maybe it's just in vain to just write a letter of protest, but at least it's trying to do something and maybe bring their eyes open to the situation. I don't know what the will of the committee would be, if they think that would be a good idea or a bad idea, or not worth it.
To me, right now, a remote option is going to open up something larger than I think we can do. If a parent says they can't test, they can still, and they are quarantined for, and I don't know the days, if it's 5 or 8 days. You talk about the funding piece. The funding piece is one, but then I would have to staff it, and I don't know if I can do that at this point. So I understand that piece, and I think that might be something as we go forward, if I'm getting a lot of cases. But in the back, I think that remote piece, and you mentioned the remote piece, I've had parents, when the school committee last week made a recommendation to go 6-4, I had parents asking for a remote option. As soon as the commissioner said he was going to the Board of Education, I had a parent ask for a remote option because they don't want to mask their student. I think we have both sides of the case, and I think we have one unilateral decision as we go forward, and if things change and DESI modifies their thought on remote, we can maybe modify, but I think that would open us up for some issues district-wide, and I know George has a comment on that as
Just
well.
providing some data, we do have currently, as of today, 46 students who have chosen to homeschool. Last year, I believe we had 119. We are searching for about 20 more who haven't, not searching, but we are in contact with about 20 more who have yet to decide. They said they would come back, the coming year. But right now we have 46 students, which is down, so most students are returning. Homeschool is an option that everyone can have. It's based under the Charles decision, and that would be one option that people could have if they do not want to come into the school building for any reason. You also have 2 Massachusetts remote schools now that are certified, TECA and Greenfield Academy. And we are also trying to work with our small percentage of immunocompromised or medically fragile. There is some language behind the medically fragile or immunocompromised now that is now requesting a lot more detail because it is such a small population, and that's what is going to take place. But there are currently remote options that are just attached to the state and not attached necessarily to the school district.
So do we want to hold off a little bit? Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah,
What do you
no,
think?
I wanted to throw that out there as we were discussing.
point.
You know, obviously, it's something that's been in my head,
Yep.
not fully vetted, for discussion with the committee. I mean, I even thought of, like the Tucker, is there some way a student can go in and out with very specific lesson plans on a Tucker or something of that nature? Could we pre-record lessons? I know you mentioned the Google Classroom. Can we just be able to notch that up just a little bit? In other words, it's not a full remote, it's an as-needed remote. But I really think that the state should be doing something and stepping up for it too.
Okay. Chris, and then I want to make sure we've got to keep moving.
Yep, just a quick one for George. You said 40-something kids,
46 students or families are homeschooling.
how about in 2019? What'd that look like?
2019, we had, I think it was 17.
Okay,
So we went from 17 to about 120, and now we're at about 46.
Thank you.
Just for ballpark.
And we have 20 that we're looking for. They haven't told us what they're doing. They haven't enrolled and they haven't
They're in the
submitted a
wings.
plan.
Gotcha, thank you.
All right. Good conversation, good ideas, and again, keep it coming. No idea question from the public or the committee is going to be a bad one. There's a lot of things that have to be thought about, so. All right, moving on to areas of focus. You want to touch on that?
Please.
In terms of what you're looking for us to
So
hopefully support?
last week it was awesome. The presentations were great. It's exciting that the committee has come together, worked really hard to look at some areas that we can move forward on this year. I thought each presentation was good. I think in speaking with George and a couple other members of our leadership team, we're encouraged that we could probably do all three, or keep that in our ballpark of areas of focus this year as goals. You'll probably see some of that in my goals this year, if the committee wants to move forward on that. So I would be looking for, formally the committee to make a motion today to support all three of areas of focus that this district can move forward on for this school year 21-22.
I'd like to make that motion.
Second. Discussion? Correct?
So we talking about in addition to our base budget, or adding that to our budget? Obviously, we've got to vet out how much.
So I'm not even there yet.
Okay.
Quite honestly, I'm looking at, okay, these are areas, now we're going to dive into what was recommended by the ECE committee, by the Related Arts Committee, and by the one-to-one committee. And then we'll start, that'll be our area this year. So as we move forward, we'll bring to the committee in October, November, whatever, these are the costs that will be, this is the plan moving forward. But there won't be, hey, we want to put TVs in all the buildings next year. That won't be something that'll come from the committee. It'll be, these are our three specific, probably big ticket items that we're going to look at this year. Whether we can do them or not will be presented and decided by this committee, but it's our area that we want to look at because it was researched, and I think it was important to all three groups. And from our June meeting, after all we brainstormed, these are the three areas that you wanted to focus in on. We wanted a vet to see that one might be out of the realm of what we wanted to do this year, but this, in discussion with us in our leadership, I think it's three areas that we can work on this year, but maybe not accomplish, but at least work on or come up with a plan for fiscal 23, fiscal 23-24, or fiscal 23-24-25.
So the way, I think, just to kind of build on that, Fred, right? So the way we've kind of set up the agenda, towards the end, there's the subcommittees, and the anticipation would be if the committee would feel it's appropriate to have an early childhood education subcommittee, to have a related arts subcommittee, they would continue to work with the leadership team as Jeff just described. And then at some point, that is going to have to come back to the full committee in terms of, to your question, what is it
So
going
in
to
other words, the motion
What is it
is
gonna
to completely vet all three ideas.
Yeah, so I think really, I think what the superintendent is looking for, so remember when we had that brainstorming meeting, we had about 22 ideas on the list?
Yeah.
So I think he's looking for clarity that we're gonna focus on those three. We're not gonna leave this meeting and then we're gonna come out in October and be like, hey, remember 9, 12, and 13, can we do those now? This is our primary areas of focus, not to say, if a committee, something comes up, something changes, the world evolves, we could look at something else, but he's looking for clarity that we're not going to go back to that list of 21 and be like, hey, I know we talked about this being the focus, but how about we're going to revisit these 5 now? Because otherwise the goals weren't aligned. So I think that, is that the
Yes, that's
thinking?
exactly it.
Sure.
And I think what I would like to present at some point in the next meeting or so, or the next meeting after that by early October, is the tie-in back to the strategic plan, which all of you endorsed. So then it would be, the action steps would be the full investigation of what those things would cost. Then you'd start getting into, okay, implementation would be the phase after that. So I think this would be, we tie it under the big umbrella of the strategic plan, but that would be our main areas of focus. And getting to Fred's point, it would be, the action plan this year would be the full investigation for all the pieces that it would take to implement, which would be a step further down the road.
So there's no explicit dollars attached to this
Right,
motion, if that's what you're asking.
What I want to say is, based upon the presentations that we had last week, and I think based upon the enthusiasm, just my interpretation of the enthusiasm of the committee, it's something we definitively need to do. You know, is start the process. You know, and it's the next
It's a good question.
baby
It's a good
step,
question.
so to speak. But I just want to make sure we weren't voting to do this.
No.
It's a good question.
That's,
If you don't ask the
I
public,
just
would
wanted
have,
to
so,
clarify
good-
that.
great question, thank you. Any other questions on that? Before we vote? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Great, unanimous support, wonderful.
Number 8,
Number 8,
Mr. Stanbrook, in your packets or in the Google Drive,
so I don't know if they were in the Google Drive, were they? Did we get-
I didn't get anything in the
We
packet.
did? Were the budget line transfers in there?
It's a folder called
Okay,
business reports.
sorry. I may have been too early when I went there, but go ahead. That's what I missed.
yeah, you want a hard copy? I got a hard
Do
copy.
you have one handy? Or I can probably access it.
Go ahead, John.
John, you, don't wait for me, keep going.
Good evening, everyone. Just some updates about the budget for fiscal year '21, and then a quick update about fiscal year '22 through July. It's only been 1 month. The first update is about State House note borrowing. So on July 23rd, this year, we renewed a $675,000 bond anticipation note, or a BAN, related to the Hanson Middle School HVAC replacement capital project via the use of a State House note, and that's in your packet if the documents to start with this. State House Notes Program is a low-cost alternative for the issuance of debt for cities and towns and districts. Notes are certified by the Department of Revenue's Director of Accounts. The interest rate was 0.44% for 1 year, and the company doing it is Unibank for Savings in Whitensville, Massachusetts. The interest rate will be, the interest amount owed will be $2,970, and the interest in principal will be due on July 22 of '22. And the interest, and if they choose to pay down any principal, will be assessed to Hanson in the fiscal year '23 capital assessment. So that was just a State House note update. The next on a fiscal year '21 review. This is going to be the document here. It's a line-by-line transfer amount for the fiscal year '21 budget. I think Mr. Tuffy had brought this up earlier, and he had come in years prior. These are all transfers to and from the budget for fiscal year '21, is to close out any deficits and to take money from where there were overages, so that it all balances out and we don't have any deficits in any line item that was voted by the school committee. On page 2, you can see it says there's no change. Sorry, go right ahead.
Okay, so, you know, just for starting, just on the top 2 lines. So I see that we added to Indian Head Elementary teacher salary, $80,121.10. And we also took from Indian Head Elementary para salaries, $175,099.03. My question would be, where did the $80,000 that we put in come from? And where did the $175,000 that was left over, where did that go?
So the way to read this document would be, if you see a positive number like the $80,121.10, that means there was an overage in the budget.
Okay.
And that's where the money's going to be coming from. And then the negative number, the number in the parentheses, is the money that was in the deficit. And then the deficit amount is where the money's going.
Okay, so this is all out of the general fund and the
Yes.
general budget? And it's just the back and forth of where the monies came from and went. So there's no change to the fiscal budget.
That's correct.
Did any money go into E&D?
No, we haven't
From this.
certified E&D yet. This is just the general fund budget.
Okay.
So basically, the sum of all the debits and the sum of all the credits are
Correct.
equal
Zero.
You're just moving money within the budget.
Yeah, there is no change to the budget at all. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Previous to John wasn't here, John Tuffy was, and if you remember last year, we froze the budget in sometime in late September, and what we had to do was, because of good fiscal work, we did have surpluses and we did have deficits. However, if we remember last spring, when we talked about bringing kids back and what was happening to our internal infinite campus system, our remote school program had staff that were originally somewhere the year before stationed there, and then we kept to moving them. Now, if you also remember, I tried to explain it, but it was maybe you glossed over. But what happened was that because of the way we had to label students last year, it was the first time we didn't label staff. So a student was labeled, whether they were in school, remote, live in person, or hybrid. So the teachers in the remote schools then showed up in every building that they had children in. For example, Patty DePross, a third grade teacher, was a teacher in Conley, was a teacher in Duval, was a teacher in Indian Head. So what that did to the budget lines, which were attached to Munis, sort of put money everywhere. So because we froze the budget, these are all the transfers that we had to do in and out, just based on the way the coding happened, because that's the way DESI demanded it last year during COVID. But John wasn't in for that. John taught me other things.
John 1.0 to John 2.0.
Any other questions to the committee on specific lines, I guess?
Yeah.
Don?
Just to jump to the bottom, on district-wide facilities, those 4 lines, contracted services, cleaning, supplies, and other. I think the first 2, the cleaning and contract, so that's a deficit. Obviously, we had more expenses. But some of those might have been reimbursable for CARES Act, I'm thinking, right? And then facilities and supplies, it's a deficit of $109,000, so it sounds like facility supplies. Is that mostly cleaning? Or
Yes.
do we know what makes up that deficit?
Cleaning and PPE.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I think just my other question, a little further up halfway, district-wide instructional supplies, general supplies, did have a surplus, $33,000. And I think some of you know I've asked before last year about books, and just wondering if that's district-wide general supplies, if that's something we can purchase books for, or if what kind of decisions made when you have a surplus in supplies, because I know a lot of parents are asked to long supply lists, and what can we help out?
That was the culminated supplies that were left over, supply lines that were left over from the individual schools. When the budget was frozen, they could not purchase anymore. We didn't know what was going to happen with COVID and CARES reimbursement and all of that, so that's why that money stayed in those lines, so we're able to balance other lines with it. Okay. However, in the future, because this was last year's budget that's over, in the future, you raise a good point, and that's why we've told principals to spend what they have in their instructional lines on what's needed for their buildings.
Sure.
So I know we've already had the talk with Dr. Jones about some materials he needs to buy in the way of books that he's deficit in, but that would be the line that it came out of. But since we froze the budget last year, we just said stop, because we don't know where we're going.
Okay.
And so that's how that happened.
Okay.
Any other questions? Before I get back to your friend, I just want to see if anyone else has anything. Fred, go ahead.
You had mentioned that PPE was part of that $109,258. Wouldn't the PPE have been covered either under CARES Act or ESSER 2?
Some of it was covered under it, but some of it we just had to order, and before we either went with them or before we either got the reimbursements, it still fell under that line. So there is some that's in there, cleaning and PPE, and then general cleaning supplies.
Okay. Did we close out the ESSER 2? I thought there was still money left in ESSER 2.
I do believe that there is still money left. I don't have.
Yeah, we're going to speak to this piece, we're going to speak to budget ESSER 2, what we have to do for ESSER 3 at our next meeting.
Yeah, Dawn had asked for the same thing, just a general update. She sent an email, just a general update on where we stand with all the ESSER funds, so we can do that.
Yeah, and actually a detailed update of everything, all the federal, because we have to vote on federal grants, and those are considered federal
Yeah,
grants.
Dawn literally asked for the exact same thing. We're going to put that on the next agenda, and we'll go through where we are with ESSER and make sure, to your point, we hit those timelines. So, right?
That's exactly correct.
Dawn asked the exact same thing, so great question.
Wait, Steve has a question.
Sorry, Steve, go
Well,
ahead.
it wasn't a question. Would you like a motion to
We
accept
do
the
have to vote this, right?
Yes.
I believe.
FY21 general fund budget final transfer amounts?
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Great. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay.
Thank you.
All set. George, you want your packet back?
John's still going.
I'm
Yep.
still going. Unfortunately, I'll try to make it quicker. I know we have a lot. So this next thing is the FY21 budget report from Munis by organizational code. And this is what matches up to this document. And I put those transfers in. So this is the FY, again, this isn't final. It's a draft only, it's subject to revision. But this is the FY21 budget report as of right now in the general fund. So I just put that in there for your packet so you can take a look at it. I also added a sheet that looks like this, and it's just an appropriation and expenditure schedule by function. I just wanted to show it because, again, this is a draft and only subject to revision. I'm going to go through every line before we get the...
Is that entitled Cherry?
Yeah, I'm trying to
no,
find that too.
I'm sorry.
What's the title in the folder? If you-
Appropriations, expenditures.
It should be appropriation and expenditure schedule or something like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's the total title.
If I can only figure out how to rotate.
Yeah, are you all having that problem too? I can't
Yeah.
rotate it. I didn't know if it was my
No, can't rotate it.
system.
No, if you have to like open it with something else and then do it.
Right.
You gotta download it probably, right? Yeah.
So I'm just showing this because this shows the line items in the general fund budget by function. And I'd like to start reporting things, by function. It's a great way for comparison purposes with other districts. It's the way that DESI requires things to be reported to them. So just was something to look at for the next meeting or the next time we have a budget thing is just take a look at this and just, if you like the way this looks, or if you don't, just please let me know. It's just something to put out to the committee for consideration and discussion maybe later on. A CARES Act update. If the CARES Act was money that came directly to Plymouth County, and towns can apply for it, and it had to be related to COVID-19 related expenses. Right now, we have $1,396,788.89 still waiting to be processed from Plymouth County as of today. That's, again, I'm going to round the numbers off, $710,000 from Whitman and $686,000 from Hanson. We've received about $171.9 thousand from Whitman so far, $287.5 from Hanson, for a total of $459,000. Again, I'm rounding the numbers off. In the normal Department of Revenue procedure, when you're talking about certifying E&D amounts, any deficit as of June 30th that's not received by the time the balance sheet is submitted, or September 30th, whichever is later, or whichever is early, I'm sorry, it's subtracted from the E&D total. So theoretically, if we had $1 million of E&D, but we had a $100,000 deficit for fill-in-the-blank fund, we didn't get the money by September 30th, we'd have $900,000 of E&D. They take that $100,000 off the E&D amount. But the Department of Revenue has specifically stated that they will not do that with COVID-19 related amounts. So that there is a large amount owed by Plymouth County to the towns and then through the towns to us. But they will not take that amount off of our excess and deficiency. And again, that was the document from the Department
John,
of Revenue.
I think Fred has a question for you on that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just speaking to the monies, at least to Hanson, I do know, I believe it was today, the Plymouth County Commissioners were at Hanson Town Hall dropping off a check.
Great.
So maybe we want to check with them. There might be some money that Hanson
We'll follow.
has coming our way.
Fantastic. Thank you. So that's just a CARES Act update. Again, the FY21 closeout process, that's what I'm starting right now. There were significant fund deficits in fiscal year 21 that existed where I had to shift costs to the general fund to avoid the deficit things that I was just talking about. First one was community evening school revolving. The fiscal year 21 deficit was $47,360. We don't charge for community evening school anymore, so there's no revenue to offset the cost of that program.
So John, was that in here?
That's not in the packet, I'm just reading it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What's wrong?
I don't want to hit
John,
a piece of paper for everything.
Yeah, one of the things we can probably do, because this is, we'll own this, I think on the agenda, the way we started, we didn't put a full financial update, and so that was us in terms of our numbering sequence. So maybe, in terms of, I like what you're doing with, hey, make sure you look at the format, we can take that for next time, but maybe we can actually do the deeper dive unless at the next meeting, and that way we'll make sure we're aligned with the agenda, the topics, and the data. So that's on us. We probably should have broken out the agenda a little bit more with some of those budget updates. So maybe if you could send those sheets along, we'll make sure that we cover it a little deeper in the next packet. Is that okay with you? Does that make sense? So that's not on you, John. You're obviously prepared. We just probably got a little snafu here with how we put together the agenda. Did you have a
Yeah,
question?
I just want to say I prefer to make sure I have it. So
Yeah.
I can read it
Yep.
and,
Yep, and I think
follow along as we're talking and not pull my.
John's going above and beyond, and he's got a whole bunch of stuff prepared for us, and we probably should have made sure we broke it out on the agenda, so we're all good, but we're all good.
So-
That's all good, yeah.
That's it.
Thanks, John.
Yes,
I do have
but
one
be prepared
question.
for next meeting, because I have a feeling you'll get a lot of questions. Yeah.
One question back to the Hanson loan, the $675,000, right? Now that's borrowed through the district, but the debt is owned by Hanson? Is that correct? Because that's not, is that a district debt that we have? How does
It's
that
a
work?
district debt, but Hanson is going to be paying.
Hanson pays, okay. Because that was a Hanson town meeting item. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm just confused, because I thought, okay.
It's a Hanson only thing.
Okay.
But it's a district.
So
Yeah.
maybe, because Don, I think you've got to look that you're not clear. So John, can you just elaborate, if we have to buy something for the town, even though it's appropriated by town meeting, we absorb the debt, correct? And then they pay us?
Yes.
So,
We assess it in the capital assessment.
so I'm looking at, for instance, the ACs at Hanson Middle School. We borrow and they approve and then they pay us,
Oh, okay.
right? Is that, am I speaking
Yes.
correctly? Okay.
Okay.
Bond authorization.
So if Whitman needed to fund something in Whitman, they could come to the district?
Like a playground. So, you know,
So it's a debt exclusion of.
so we would purchase and then they would pay us.
Yeah, that's our bond rating, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct, right?
Yeah.
That's our bond rating?
We're financing that through Unibank, right? Is it Unibank? Yeah, they do all that.
Okay. Okay,
that
thank you,
correct?
yes,
Yeah,
that
no,
helps.
good question. And we'll do a deeper financial dive, I think, next month, so we'll make sure.
Yeah, absolutely, yep.
Yes,
Real quick, just to speak, that's always on the budget. It breaks down the different capital projects when we go to assessments. So it's been right on there as well. We assess Hanson for that.
I just want to tell the committee, so you're going to see with Mr. Stanbrook, he's going to provide you a ton of information. If you want more information or if you want it a different way, let me know, because John is going to give you more detail than you've probably ever had before. That's been an ask, but I want to make sure it's streamlined so that you can read it, and it's something that's an easy read, and I don't have to have an MBA to be able to read that piece, okay? But I think John is going to provide you, he's provided our office more information as active budget numbers than I've seen, and it's been beneficial for us to see where we want to go. John's also been tasked to start looking at a 5-year budget plan for us and trying to get an idea of what fiscal '23 is going to look like as far as assessment once we open. His task right now is to close, and the challenge with closing has been the reimbursements through CARES and things like that. But he's pretty close to closing, and we're going to provide you a much more detailed, in-depth of where we stand now, where we look to the future at the next meeting.
okay, Sean, do you have something real quick?
Real quick, I was going to ask if there would be some sort of projection about where you think you're at for fiscal '23.
So,
Because obviously with the strategic plan, and to Mr. Small's point, if you know for sure that we're within the, there's a rough 5% that's been thrown around, and the things on the strategic plan are roughly within that makes sense. But if you know, like, we're way below, that's much different than if we're over. So I think having a gauge sooner rather than later is helpful for, instead of all of a sudden in November, you're going in front of finance committees, you think you're going for growth, and then all of a sudden it's going to have to be an override, and there's a miscommunication. So sooner rather than later.
So I think you hit around that. Our goal is to try to put some rough numbers around by October, so we can see projection. I mean, what we know where our staffing is, we know what we're looking at, and again, with John trying to give us an estimate, so we can get to the FinComs and say, this is the ballpark where we're at, without doing the deep dive of the three pieces, or the three initiatives that we're looking at right now. But if we're looking at just a straight, where we are with our staff, where we are with a contract, regular movement of fixed costs, we're going to work on that for the committee and for the towns.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna keep moving.
Yep,
I
so
see
I'm number
Dr.
9, right?
Jones here.
Chris is here. So-
How do you want to do this? Or-
So yeah, so we're looking at handbook updates. Most of them are minor, but I'm going to bring high school principal Dr. Jones up. He's in the middle of being the principal at freshman orientation and doing some handbook updates. I think he's here to answer any of your questions or present his changes. I don't see many of them as major, but you might have a couple of questions. So in your packet, you have a memo from me, or to me from Chris. Number one is removing of face coverings, because that was last week, and as things change today, it's not. We're going to cover face coverings as through the school committee policy, and in our handbook, it's going to say, please see school committee policy, because that might change in October again. So instead of Chris coming back and the other principals coming back and us voting a new policy, a new handbook addendum, we're going to see face coverings, please see school committee policy. And Michelle, I don't know what the policy is on face covering, JBC something or other. So we're going to just put that in the handbooks with the approval of the committee today. So Chris, please.
Sure. Thank you for covering that first, and thank you for letting me hop in so I can get back down to the freshmen and their parents. The biggest change that I just want to touch base on is number 2. All of your other changes are basically post-COVID restrictions changes. They have to do with time slots, they have to do with busing, they have to do with different things that we either suspended or adjusted because of COVID regulations. We've moved those back to pre-COVID regulations, so kind of a business as normal type of thing. So that language has gone back, so that's not a big deal. The biggest one that I wanted to call your attention to is exams. We have gotten rid of midterm and final exams for the foreseeable future, or for good, if you will, unless something changes that makes us want to go back to them. We did not have them during COVID. We are not having them moving forward. Exams typically are used to inform teacher instruction and the effectiveness of teacher instruction and to check the mastery for students. But what we found with midterms and finals is that we take a lot of time building up to the midterm. We take half days for the midterm, and then we don't really do a lot with the midterm. We do some with the midterm, but then we get to the final and we take time building up to the final where we do half days for the final and we prepare for the finals. The kids take the finals, leave, never see the finals. So that's a lot of preparation, a lot of testing, a lot of pressure, a lot of wasted face time, if you will, or in-class time for students where they're sitting in front of the teachers who we want them in front of. That goes unused. So what we did is we got rid of midterms and finals moving forward. We're looking at our assessments and how we can adjust our assessments to be more meaningful throughout the course of the year and quarterly, so that we can adjust instruction as needed for students to make sure that they're keeping up on a more rapid pace or shorter check-ins than typically. So that's the reason for that change. There's also another change that I do want to bring your attention to that's not in the handbook. It doesn't need to be in the handbook, but it is a programmatic change, and we are moving to hard grades for every quarter. You may remember that for a while, each quarter, our quarter 1 grade would be a progress report, and then we'd have the midterm grade. Then you had your quarter 2 grade, or your quarter 3 grade, which would be a progress report. It'd be a soft grade, and then we'd have our final 4th quarter grade. We're moving to 4 hard quarter grades. I've yet to find another school in the state that uses that soft quarter grade. And the idea of student accountability, we want to build in student accountability. The idea that if you tell me to do something and you say, okay, well, you have to have it done next Tuesday, that's a lot different than saying, well, if you can get it done next Tuesday, get it done. Then I tend to say, well, this is a pretty good show on tonight, I can do that tomorrow. And then tomorrow happens, and then the next day is something else. So it helps with student accountability. It helps us with students identify who needs help earlier and then make sure they get that help. But other than that, like I said, that's not a handbook change, but that's a programmatic change that I think, in all honesty and transparency, you should know about. And the handbook change of the midterms and finals. Other than that, everything's COVID language and updating to make sure it's up to date.
Chris, has there been a trend to do away with midterms and finals? Or are we kind of leading the pack? Is it data that supports the decision?
There are some schools that have gotten rid of midterms and finals.
Yep.
And a lot of times it's because of the build-up around the test, where they get additional time with the teacher by getting rid of those half days before the test and then the study guides before that. And then there's the idea that the whole idea of testing and what you do with the test after, what you do with that information that you get. Where even in, and this is not to say anything about anybody, but even in best effort, you can use the midterm you can't use the final. So the change to instruction in the school actually comes where now teachers will plan through the end of the midterm, end of the final. You'll still see assessments at the end of those 2 points, because let's be honest, you don't want to finish your course a week before the last day of school in the summer. That's not good for anybody. But you'll still see a test, but it will not be that traditional final that you're looking at.
Yeah, so I was just curious, are we kind of leading the charge on this, or do you think there's, do you know of other, I'm just curious.
I know.
It sounds good to me.
I know of 3 or 4 other schools that have done it, high schools that have done it.
It's been talked about for a while. I mean, it's something we talked about 5-6 years ago. The loss of instructional time for those 4 half days, or 8 half days, is challenging. As a principal, as a teacher, that final exam, or the anxiety around the final exam that a kid takes or doesn't take, you know, I wasn't sometimes the best student in the summer, and you spend 15 minutes studying for it, and you got a half day off for an hour-and-a-half exam. I support this with Chris. I think the more formative assessments that can be given to see where kids are at and how we can improve instruction throughout the course of the year is the better way to go than building up for 2 20% exams that if you don't do well, it doesn't really show that you don't have mastery of that class, and it doesn't drive the instruction for the second half of the year. If in the ideal world, if teachers were teaching 2 or 3 periods a day and they could take that mid-year exam and really break it down in their department and share information, we just don't have that opportunity. So I think this is a good way to go. I know different schools have taken away final exams and kids would give presentations. And I know of one school, our friend Brian down at Case High School in Swansea, they call them passion days. So kids will do what they're passionate about and present to their classroom or their peers, and they take it over time and say, this is what I've learned this year from this course, and this is how it goes. We've talked about, for seniors, the end of the year project, or what's the name?
Internship or a capstone.
A capstone project. You know, so you have a culmination of what they want to do. But this is one step further. Chris is pretty progressive and pretty well read in educational theory, and he's out there talking to folks. I think this is a good move for our high school.
Excellent.
Good.
Any other questions for Chris at all?
Done?
Not necessarily a question, but a comment for the committee, and Jeff, to piggyback on the mask policy that we're now referring, or the handbooks that will refer to the mask policy. We had MASC talk to us about policy, and Jim Hardy was pretty adamant to make sure your handbooks are in line with your policies. And he gave an example of graduation, where a certain district had something in the handbook about graduation and the policy wasn't in alignment. So I haven't honestly compared all the pages of the high school handbook or elementary or middle school to our policy to know that that's in line. I did look at one item in particular, and that would be the student dress code. It is in elementary, middle school, and high school. And for elementary handbooks, it does refer right to our policy. So this is, it's a small font, but this is our policy dress code that we have. As you get to the middle school handbook, it becomes a little more elaborate. And you come to the high school dress code handbook, and it becomes multi-paragraph and onto the next page, and it's got 8 bullet points. So I'm not looking to make a change. I wanted to make that comment that this may be something that should be looked at in the future in regards to aligning the handbooks with whatever policies we have.
And I think that's going to be something that requires some thought, right? Because it's kind of what comes first. Do you want to put the emphasis on the policies? Do you want to put the emphasis on the handbooks? So
Right.
Is it a minimum standard in the policy? So I think that's something that...
Because certainly what's in the
administration
high
might-
school handbook, especially for dress code,
Right.
it's not written at all in the policy. So I can see that being left open to interpretation.
Right. Okay. That's a good point. something to clean up in the future for sure.
We'll make sure in the handbook committee that we look at that and make sure that we're looking at aligned, and any questions we have up, we'll bring to you before we.
Well, and one thing we can do, I think, if one of the things we should be doing tonight is we should create a policy subcommittee. And so it might be a good, there is something that subcommittee needs to do, but in addition, perhaps this is another item where maybe that policies subcommittee could meet with the handbook committee and we could, hey, how are we not duplicating efforts and aligning with each other? So that might be something to do right out of the gate.
Sure.
To try and just make sure, again, it's Don's point spot on. Like, we don't want to say this here and this here, so, but we got to think it through, and we
Yeah.
probably can't get there
Yep,
tonight.
not looking to make a motion or anything
No,
tonight.
I think it's a great call, So.
Any other questions for Chris?
Motion to accept the.
Well, I was going to do them all together.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If that's okay with the group, just, because they're not super detailed, so.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, you know what? How about we do, because Chris is gonna skedaddle.
Yeah.
So why don't we do the high school one?
Sure, we can do
Since
that.
Fred's gonna make the motion. That
Motion
way, he doesn't have to worry about
accept
coming.
the high school changes as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Great, unanimous. Thanks, Chris. You're up.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much, I
Chris.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to present the Hanson the middle school handbook changes, and they're really just language changes, updating it to 2021, 22. Mr. Dupre is now the principal of Whitman Middle School, changed Mr. Tuffy to Mr. Stanbrook, and then adding My Payments Plus, a new website for My Payments Plus, and then repaginated the numbers for the middle school handbook. For the elementary school handbook, again, just language, but they did add a little bit more specific around, on page 43, example of racially harassing contact in the elementaries. We don't want to think elementary kids are doing things on email or text or social media, but they are. So we added that because they're finding TikTok and things like that in the lower grades. So we just added that to cover that. So if they do have to address a situation of harassing conduct, that's covered. And again, it's not anything huge in the elementary books except language and changes for 21, 22. So I'm just looking for a motion to accept both the elementary
moved.
and the
Second.
middle.
This is for elementary and middle school. Any further discussion, questions? Great. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Just a point of reference, this is going to happen in June next year. With COVID, the goal last year was to get this done in June, so we weren't doing it the meeting before school opens. So it's on our, and you'll see later on in our school committee calendar, handbooks will be done in June.
Okay, so now we're moving to number 10, which is the annual agenda. So this was, there's a number of things tonight that are kind of follow up from the committee. So it's a document, I printed it, it's a long document with every month and then kind of what we had teed up for each month. It's in your packets, but basically this was something that George, Jeff, myself had talked about and then Michelle was kind enough to put together. So what we're trying to do here is create, again, better transparency and understanding with the committee of kind of what's going to happen every month. So this will hopefully solve the fact that if, you know, I had a question about, hey, I really want some more information on, for example, what's going on with our opening? What's going on with our class sizes? What's our enrollment? What are our homeschool numbers? Well, you can see that that's going to be on the agenda next meeting. So, you know, that might save you the question of, hey, can we talk about that? You already know what's here. It also shows some of the things that we're required to do. So, you know, this is really helpful. At least I found it extremely helpful when Jeff and Michelle were sharing this of, you know, some agendas are going to be pretty tight because we already have so many other things we need to do. So basically the point of this is what I think we want to try and do is keep this as kind of a living document. So it'll probably show up in your Google Drive every month and we'll just put the updated copy in there. If you see something that's not on here, so next meeting, this would be a great time to do this next meeting. If you see something like, hey, I really want to talk about, I want us to talk about an update on special education. Can we do that annually? Great. Bring that up when we put annual agenda listing on there. We'll make sure we get it on the agenda. Everyone kind of has a nice clear picture because sometimes we get that visibility of, I really want to talk about this. Well, there's already 32 things on here. Wait a second, maybe not. Or, again, you just missed the timing. So that's all we're trying to do here. It's meant to be a living document. Michelle, thank you for helping us put this together. it's something that, again, you can all see kind of what's going on. So for the next meeting, for example, we have superintendent's goals. That's going to be on the agenda. We have an opening update, and then based upon the conversation we have tonight, we're going to make sure we do a little bit more of a financial update, right? So those are things that you already know are going to be on the agenda. It'll just help you if, I know some of you will send a note to me and say, hey, can we add this to the agenda? Again, this way there's no secrets, there's no surprises, you all kind of see what's here. So that's all. We don't need to do a motion, we don't need to do a vote. It's just meant to be a tool. You'll see it in your packets going forward, and we'll just update it as we go along. I don't know if there's anything else.
No, I just think this is a living document. And there's certain things that we just wanted to earmark, hey, look, this is when we want to present it. This is when we should have to, when we have to present it. So we have an idea going forward, what we have on the docket for June, from now until June. And we can always add, you know, but I think it was important when we talked about this in June of last year, kind of putting out a yearly agenda so that folks know if they want to attend a school meeting, they know probably in December, we're going to talk about the budget. And in February, we're going to put forth the budget presentation, and in March, we have to certify the budget. So that's that crucial time. So people will know. We can post this too on our website, and then we can add to it. And the other thing, Chris, you mentioned in September, we're going to talk about opening, but that's going to include our enrollment, where we are with homeschool, where we are with choice, where we are with class size, things like that. So,
sound good? Makes sense? Yes, Tom?
Thank you, Jeff, because we often get the question about school choice, so now families know if they want to hear about that, that's the meeting.
Correct.
I don't know if you're taking feedback on this. I noticed in June, there's one item, summer program updates. Is that updates to the committee or updates to the families? What is the context of that?
Or Michelle, you might even know.
that would be the committee of what we're doing for the summer.
Okay.
I was add to that.
Okay. Thinking along the lines of community engagement and families, I know we offer a lot of summer programs, so my mind was thinking this is maybe the families and what summer programs we offer in the district. I know up here we have science is an important program, and different elementary schools offer the programs. And I don't know if there's an opportunity where we can share that with the families sooner in the year. I know YMCA's and so forth take enrollment around March or April.
I was just going to say, all those emails come out in February and March to families.
Yeah,
Sure,
so the emails individually can be difficult if you miss that one email as a family. If possible, we could I don't know who would do this, but gather throughout the district what each school may be doing or a teacher may be doing, and put together a PDF on our website and say, hey, families, here's all our district summer program offerings, you know, and they can pick and choose because we're a district and students may come up here and do a summer or, you know, throughout the district.
So just to build on that, if I'm hearing you correctly, Don, right? I think part of what you're asking for is maybe sharing a little bit more with the committee about the depth and breadth of our summer programs and understanding that before the summer hits. That way, if we did want to follow up or ask questions, we could do that in advance of June. So maybe just moving that up a little bit or something like that. But
Yeah.
George, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Traditionally, that was just to make sure that the committee's aware of everything that we have, and all the publicity goes out previous to that. To gather it from a district perspective, I'm sure we could. The one thing I would say is that a lot of these things run based on the availability of the staff to run them. So I don't know if I don't know if in March or April that you'd have the staff ready to run them. So, but I definitely think the conversation can come earlier, and we can try to put something together. That's no problem. But the reason why it's in June is just to sort of let you know that with the end of the school year, next week we'll be beginning whatever it is, DARE camp, special ed camp, or whatever. And then traditionally, we've always had the schools sort of promote their own. But that doesn't mean that we can't internally look at that and try to do it from a district perspective.
Yeah, maybe it's something we can do in December, and this is just kind of like, hey, this is what we did last year. You're not committing to anything for the future, but it creates the opportunity to maybe engage with the communities in terms of some of our things.
Right, as families plan their vacations in February or March, start thinking, well, if my child wants to do that robotics camp or that summer camp, maybe I pick a different vacation week, and, you know, having that information out there for the families.
Good point. So we can probably do an update in December. But, so I'll add that, and then this will be a living document. We can talk about it.
Okay.
We can put it on as a standing agenda item. If we pull it up and everyone's like, I'm good, great, then we'll just move on. Okay, I think we're on number 11, public comment.
Nope, my calendar.
Wait, where are you?
That
Did I
was a
skip one already?
That was the sub number under calendar update, right?
Oh, sorry. I'm missing my numbers are messing me up.
Oh, wait a minute.
Public
No,
comment.
no,
See,
you're
my
wrong. You're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. Should've kept all this together, you're
We
right,
don't
you're
even have to
absolutely right.
figure it out. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit, or I wanted to make sure we spoke about public comment. So there was a couple things that I just wanted to touch on. There was a couple comments on social media, and I think I just wanted to clarify a couple things first. So one, from a Mass General Law standpoint, public comment is not required. So it's not something that's required. I think some of the guidance we got in one of our workshops from MASC is that school committees meetings are meant to be business meetings that are held in public, right? So we have business that we need to move through, as we're kind of evidencing tonight. We got 19 items. We got some things to do. Now, all of that having been said, and I'm going to speak for myself, and then I want to hear from all of you, I think there's nothing more important than hearing from the community and engaging with the community. There's nothing more important. That to me, that's at the top of all of our job functions in terms of whether it's the committee or the leadership. We have to be aware of what's going on and how we can help. So that feedback's really important. I think what I was hoping, and Jeff and I talked about this in advance of last meeting, and I don't want to rehash why or what we did, but the thinking was we were going to have a lot of public comment last meeting. And we got 50 pages worth of public comment last meeting. So I think our guess was pretty spot on. We wanted to make sure that we were fair and equitable and that we allowed the committee the opportunity to hear all of those voices. So that was the struggle with, well, how much time are we going to do, right? 500 people, 2 minutes a person, that's 1,000 minutes. So if we had started at 6, we would have finished at, I don't know, sometime the next morning. So that really didn't make sense. And then how are you equitable and fair? You know, do we draw numbers out of a hat? You want to speak, you can, you can't. So this gave us that mechanism. So we had a lot of good public comment. And I know as a committee, based upon your feedback, folks took the time and read those comments and articles and sub-articles. So I think what's different than town meeting, right? At town meeting, there's something that's being proposed, everyone votes, right? So everyone needs to have that understanding. For us, it's 10 of us voting. We have to get that feedback, we have to get that understanding. I think being transparent and sharing it, we posted it on the website, is also relevant, but that's very different. So, you know, I wanted to clarify, we did public comment last meeting, it took a different form. And then my last point on this is, you know, we are in the 21st century, right? So gone are the days of getting on our horse and buggy and going to the town meeting hall, and that being the only opportunity for people to share their voices. So, you know, I think we really need to be thoughtful about using these other forms, right? Whether it's email or Google Docs or letters. We can still get letters, great. But we need to take those different forms. So really what I'm hoping to get from the committee is we need to establish some degree of, I'm hoping for your help, right? We need to establish some sort of parameters and norms for what do we want. Do we want public comment at the beginning of the meeting? Do we want to put a time limit? Do we want to do it at the end? We heard from Mr. Kane. You know, I love the idea of getting comment in the meeting, but I also worry about, so where does that stop? You know, if we have 50 people here, do we just keep going? And I need your help because I don't want to be the one making that decision. I want to support the will of the committee. So kind of wanted to open that up. I think when we're finished with this conversation, I'd like to have clarity on where are we putting public comments? How long is it? Are we seeking alternative means, emails, etc.? And how do we want to handle, you know, public comment within the meeting? So with that being said, I'd open it up to the committee. We can talk about it, motion it, however you want. Chris.
Just a couple comments. My first one is, I agree with you that doing it any other way on that particular issue was not practical, right? But had we not had that component of soliciting people's, you know, thoughts, I don't think we would have had the same representation of the community in the building. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that's, I'm sure it created more opportunity for public comment to be, for people's comments to be heard than, you know, if we had a, you know, I don't think all those people would have showed up, basically is what I'm trying to say. So I hope we continue to offer that as a means to communicate or at least hear from the public. Goodness, I lost my train of thought. Take the next one now. Maybe I'll get back to it.
Yeah, Frank.
There are a number of different ways to handle public comment at the beginning of a meeting.
That's what.
When we're discussing an issue or going over an issue, I think that input from the public, as we've had lines here at times in the past, are a good thing. I think it's good to hear from people. We want to make sure it's, how do I say it, based upon the topic that we're discussing. To do something, I think I brought it up months back, one school committee I read about, they have a voicemail line, and it records for exactly 2 minutes. And you can call up, leave your comment, and it's screened beforehand just to make sure there's no vulgarities, etc. And it's played at the school committee meeting. It's not, there's no deliberation on it. It's pretty much the same thing as someone coming up to the podium. It's an easier way of somebody being able to communicate with the school committee. Or that's the way it's intended from what I read. So that might be an idea for public comment before a meeting or as we begin a meeting. So people always know that they can get their thoughts expressed. As far as when we're discussing an issue, I think that the podium's a great thing. And if someone wants to come up and chime in, I think it's appropriate.
Great, thank you, Fred. Go ahead.
I guess a couple of things. So I guess the question is, what do we want from public comment? I agree with Chris that I think that the way that public comment was handled at the last meeting was great because we got to hear from so many different people and so many perspectives. I also think that there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there. And so, I don't think I know. But to me, I think that it says a lot about someone in their public comment, right? Like, are we trying to engage people and hear as much as we can? And if that's the case, then keeping a voicemail or a line where people can, send a comment like they did is fine. But if we want people here in this place engaging with us, then I think we need to think about those types of things. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Just because I think it certainly is easier to sit at home and I'm watching this meeting and I'm going to type a comment right now or I'm going to call. Personally, I'd like to see people here. I'd like to see people in the chairs. But I do feel two ways about it because I think that the way it was handled last week was great because we got to hear so many different perspectives. So I guess that's my question is, what is our goal with public comment? Are we trying to engage the public or are we just trying to hear their thoughts on anything we have on our agenda? That's
question. But I want to, before I get back
Oh,
to
I'm
Chris,
sorry, I
hold
didn't
on,
see
I
it.
want to see if anyone else have thoughts, ideas.
Oh, please.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
No, it wasn't me. I was
Oh,
asking if
okay.
anyone else did before I went back to you.
I just wanted to, Fred reminded me,
Remember.
I just wanted to state how I think it's vitally important for people to be able to speak to a topic on our agenda as we are talking about it. I think that's crucial. However, I think it's reasonable to kind of, if in the event we get something as controversial as last week, then we can tweak it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I want to be as welcoming to the public as we can, but we got to understand we don't want to be here for 4 hours sometimes. You know what I mean? It's like so. Yeah. I think if we make our best effort to include public comment, and we get on the other side, people understand. We can't have 400 people here talking. It's. So I'm just looking for some flexibility. I don't know how that works, but I think that's reasonable to shoot for,
Yeah, hang on, Fred, I'll come back to you. Done.
I like the email address we've created, whinfo, right, at whrsd.org. I don't know if that evolves or is an opportunity, and we maybe put it on our website that is an avenue for public comment, and that those would then all be shared from the superintendent to the committee. And as far as in person, absolutely, I enjoy having the public come and share in person. And then I think the question you had was at the beginning of the meeting or during the meeting. And I think throughout the meeting, when the topic is relevant and someone has to speak on it, I think if they approach the podium, that would be welcome. It does put it on your shoulders as chair to monitor and manage the volume. Maybe the voice and the quantity volume. So that's.
Okay, so one thing we can do, I think we talked about this, remind me if I didn't, but the other thing I think that's relevant too, so we have that whinfo@whrsd.org. People can certainly send that in. One thing we can probably add, because this came up with a thought, I actually think it might have been Sean or someone else had emailed and said, hey, can you share this with the committee? And then it creates this weird dynamic of are we violating open meeting laws by sending emails to people? So what we could do is on the school committee members page, we could probably just add a little link that says email all. So that way, and I don't think it was you, Sean, but whoever it was, if they want to email everyone, we're not going to put them through the arduous task of okay, what is David's email? Let me copy it. Let me get just hit a little button, you can email all, and then they can send it. We're not sharing it. We can't deliberate about it, but everyone
Just
sees it at the
receiving
same
information.
time.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go through that clearinghouse, because whinfo@whrsd.org might just get a simple question that says, hey, Jeff, what's going on with orientation? Or, hey, so I don't think we necessarily, so we can definitely add that. It sounds like we want to continue to engage during the meeting. Yeah, and absolutely, I'd love to
Can I
get your
just add,
thoughts on this too.
I appreciate the public comment at the beginning, and I appreciate it during the meeting. I just caution the committee to engage in dialogue in comment.
Oh, yeah.
I think, because that is something we've had in the past, where someone would be at the podium and ask a question, and the committee would then answer, and it would create the dialogue back and forth. I think public comment is comment and not a question to be answered by the committee, because sometimes you don't have the information. So it really should be, hey, we're voting on the budget, or we're talking, and somebody comes up and says, I really think you should, but it's not a dialogue back and forth. And I think we've had that in the past, and it opens up the door to us getting in trouble, and people going off agenda. So I think, I don't mind at all. I love hearing from folks, because I think it helps you make decisions because you're representing people. But I caution with the back and forth dialogue. And I think the reason we set up the parameter last year in certain cases was so that there wouldn't be dialogue. It would just be comment, you could get it. But I just caution the committee to make sure that we have a parameter, maybe put even a time frame on it, so that it's not 5 to 10 minutes, or once you speak, you have to let everybody else speak.
Correct.
Back and forth. So.
I was going to say the same thing as far as the time. Other meetings that, when I was MTA, there was public comment at the beginning, but there was a time limit. You had X amount of minutes to speak, and, that was it. And then, during it, if you had questions, even like the regular meeting from the board members, you speak, and it's just like you call and you ask, okay, you've already spoken, so I'm going to see if anybody else needs to do the same idea, and that would be the same with public. But I would caution you to have some kind of time limit either in your head or spoken out like this, before the public comment, you will be allowed 2 minutes or something like that, so that it doesn't get really heavy. And if there's more that they need to say, they can contact, Jeff individually or whatever. But I think, a time limit is, crucial, because like you said, we got a lot to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's helpful. Hillary, did you have a word?
I thought it might be helpful to the public comment at the beginning, because if what we're talking about is not having dialogue back and forth, then we don't necessarily need to have people commenting after agenda items. So if we did something at the beginning and something at the end, because if it's comments, so you figure someone's commenting at the beginning because maybe it was something at a previous meeting, or they know something's coming up, then they hear the agendas, and then someone maybe has a comment based on something we went over in the meeting. To prevent the dialogue.
So let me throw this out based upon the feedback, because I'm just trying to listen to all of you and try to see if this works. So if we have public comment at the beginning of the meeting and we do the 15 minutes, because that's what we've kind of up to 15 minutes. So very similar tonight. If we had 20 people here, it's going to be, you're going to be quick. You're going to get about 45 seconds each. Be to the point. However, and because I hear what you're saying, and it sounds like there's some pretty healthy consensus around, and the budget is different, right? So that is there's a public forum on that, so put that aside. That's a totally different beast in terms of, there has to be public comment, and that's different. But let's say we have an item on the agenda, right? We can certainly, and I'll just need your help here, because any of you can just move to the vote if we need to, but we can certainly kind of gauge, okay, we're talking about something, there's 3 people there. We do the committee thing, we open it up, I'll use the kind of thinking here based upon your feedback. Okay, we're going to hear from the public. We'll give everyone a couple minutes, but we're not going to go back and forth as a committee. So no matter what is said, and then we bring it back to the committee in terms of, is there anything that we want to, discuss before we make a vote at that point? It may, otherwise, I'm not sure how to engage during. And I do think we need to continue to highlight alternative means. So there is nothing to preclude someone, because I find it helpful. I think, Fred, you said the same thing with like John's stuff. If there's an agenda item and a parent or someone in either town wants to send a note and say, hey, I have a strong feeling on this based upon this, this, and this, I'd much prefer to have that and read that and digest that in advance of the meeting than during the meeting. So there's nothing, at the same time, you want to come to the mic, great. But if you're really interested in trying to share information, that's a great venue to do it. Email all of us, email me, email WHInfo, email him. Does that kind of sound like a loose parameter we can work with? I mean, we don't have to vote it, we don't need a motion. I wanted to make sure, as being a new chair here, I want to make sure I'm following the will of the committee. I do not want to just be like, this is what I'm thinking, I'm going to need your help. And if it's not going well, I expect one of you to say, hey, can we hear a little more public comment here, or can we move along? So, Chris and then Fred.
I just personally think it's so valuable to get the public comment for the people who take the time to come here.
That's
Okay.
absolutely 100%.
And so, and also, I think it's important to remember that the perspectives and opinions in the community sometimes can help us make a decision right here and now. So I would like to see people use as many different avenues as possible to communicate to us. But I do think it's really important to be able to have someone stand up while we're discussing something, give their passionate whatever it is, and then that's it. I agree. We shouldn't go back and forth. It's just too unpredictable and difficult.
Fred, yeah.
And actually, Chris stole half of my thunder. I think it's important for people to be able to communicate with us and to communicate in as many different ways as we can possibly provide. If we did a voicemail that is then emailed to all the committee members, I know in today's age that's not too hard to set up. If we did the one email address, click all, connect to all committee members, boom, we get an email. If we're doing it as an in-person, in hearing folks, just to be able to have written parameters. We've been hijacked in the past where there have been personal attacks on people, what can and can't be said, and make sure the people, when they're coming to the podium, understand that. And to have a maximum time limit, but it may be shortened, due to a number of people. We have all the rules so everyone knows what we're doing. Bang, right up front. I think that would be a healthy thing.
Can't we do something in the spirit instead of the letter? You know what I mean, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be hard because I think it's we're just going to be shortened to the point. I mean, unless we have a handout at the beginning, which I don't know if that's going to work. I think we can do it. I think the other thing is we just want to be efficient. I mean, like Fred, with your voicemail concept, I'm not sure voicemail works for everyone. But regardless of whether it's voicemail or letter or however it is, again, if somebody emails all of us and says, hey, we'd like to have this as public comment, we can certainly have a folder on the website and make anything. So if someone sends us a letter and says, hey, I want this to be public, great, we'll go put it in a folder. Yeah. Right? I mean, as long as it's not violating any parameters that they can't. So that starts to, again, I'm looking for efficiency. I think we've got to be efficient in some of these things, and at the same time, I don't want to shut anyone out, and I want to be equitable and fair, because again, we heard from 495 people. I don't want someone to just stand up and be like, well, I'm going to get the last word. Well, how is that fair to the other people that responded, right? So I think this is helpful. This helps me a lot, and I think I'm just going to continue to ask for your help. I just wanted to kind of take the temperature of the committee and make sure we were on the right path. Do you have something to share, Sean? But you're the only one here, so we might as well give you the opportunity.
Can't say
We're
no.
done with public comment. No.
No, thanks for having the discussion, I appreciate it. Just your point about the 500 people and whatever, 2 minutes a person, that hasn't been my experience. My experience, usually they come together. And if somebody just spoke at the microphone and it's a concept that you agree with, then you wouldn't go up and speak, so it has an efficient way of just working itself out. And I always pause when a committee says, there's too many people to speak, so we're not going to let anybody speak. I'd rather kind of set a general time frame, but really welcome people to speak. From my perspective, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that helps. I think the takeaway there is just keep the feedback coming. If we need to put this back on the agenda, we will. But it sounds like we'll have an open first agenda item. Is everyone good? First agenda item will be 15 minutes open. We can hear from people. That'll give us guidance into other things we need to talk about, and then we'll try and work folks up into it as best we can. Yes.
Do we want to try and hijack some of these kids and have them come in and say hello and welcome? I'm totally serious. They're obviously getting the grand tour.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe just
I think
before
they're doing
we-
their
Thing for
thing.
them.
We can wave as they go by. Not to be lost on us while we're here, though, as we look around with the kids passing by.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on to school calendar updates. I have a quick one, and then Jeff's got the big one. Again, this was something that we said we'd bring back to the committee. Start times, 6 p.m., good? Everyone good? 6 p.m. for the rest of the year?
Oh, well,
I would prefer it to be later myself,
Okay. Give me a time.
7.
The rest of the committee?
6:30?
Do a straw poll. I don't need a motion, but give me a straw poll. We'll just go majority rules. So, Fred, what time you want?
I mean, I'll go in the middle, 6:30, as Chris had suggested. If that's the-
yeah, that
Sounds fair.
6:30.
Is everyone good with 6:30?
Yeah.
Even better. Great.
All right.
Excellent. So, Michelle, we'll do, for the rest of your 6:30 start time. Excellent. Everyone good? Thank you. All right, and then you had calendar.
Sure, so you had a draft of the calendar, we had an error on the calendar, meaning Good Friday was listed as a school day. So we changed the calendar, and also after discussions with our association, December 23rd is now the beginning of holiday recess. So we had talked about that being a school day. December 23rd is not a school day, but so I need this committee to just affirm that the calendar, the first day of school is now September 1st, and the last day of school is June 15th. June 20th is the 20th was a no school day in support of Juneteenth, which is a Sunday, and it is now a state holiday, which would carry over to Monday. So if we had 5 snow days, our last day of school would be the 23rd. So the calendar is correct and updated. I just need the committee to vote it
Motion to
in.
accept as read by Jeff.
Second?
Any discussion? Great. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Great. Unanimous. Okay. Capital Committee. So I have this update. So again, this was follow-up things that we committed to doing here that we're doing. So Jeff and I had sat down with Lincoln to talk about the Whitman Capital Committee. And so I'm just going to share some of the notes I took because I think it's helpful for the committee to understand. The purpose of the committee is really looking at the capital needs of the town, including the school district. They're preparing an annual report, submitting to the Board of Selectmen a 5-year plan. They're presenting projects and things that would require funding to town meeting. They're a review and recommend body to the Board of Selectmen. It had become Building and Facilities Committee, and the previous language had a charge of oversight, which didn't necessarily make sense. And then the more important point that we moved to was kind of the role of school committee members on the capital committee. So this is kind of what Lincoln had shared, and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm sure he'll correct me if I get it wrong, but I think we got it. Basically, just making sure that the school committee members could act as a neutral arbiter and presenter of items to the committee, right? So they're kind of the go-between between the school committee and the capital committee. Looking at a liaison being the presenter and advocator for the schools. So we kind of talked about the process, and this is kind of what we envisioned kind of the process looking like. So the flow really should be between the facilities committee to the capital committee. So the school committee facility committee already has, subcommittee rather, already has a lot of these components within it. So flowing that to the capital committee, and then the school committee member and liaison would basically serve in that communications role, right? And so Fred's appointed as the school committee member already. We need to appoint a liaison. What Jeff and I had talked about was probably just having the chair of the facility subcommittee be the liaison. So between Fred and Mike, the two of them would be the liaisons to make sure that, again, as things are flowing in from the capital committee, it's coming to the facility subcommittee, as things are going from the facilities subcommittee, and it flows back and forth to just make sure that when we're working on capital projects, there's an alignment. So that's kind of what we were thinking. It happens to be Mike as the chair this year, but if we change the chair, so be it. But basically between Fred and Mike, the charge and focus would be to just make sure that they're making sure that as we go from what the school needs, it's flowing into the capital committee, and vice versa, and it's being presented that way, and obviously coming back to the committee as needed. I think the timeline, I had it in here, it came up earlier. They're looking to have a draft plan again. This was when we spoke a couple weeks ago, probably sometime in October. And then they would only include the school committee members on that agenda as needed. So that was another important point. So it's not that, Fred, you're welcome to attend as, I think, a Whitman resident, but from a school standpoint, there would be a clear delineation of there's going to be school items or not. So that's kind of what we had talked about. Fred, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm appointed to the committee as a full member of the committee.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm going to be at every meeting as a committee member.
Exactly.
As far as the liaison, and, Mike's more than welcome, but I would think having perhaps an Ernie, someone that can really communicate exactly the facilities plan and answer facilities questions that, even on the facilities subcommittee, we don't have those answers just like that, where Ernie lives and breathes it every day, would be a great choice. That would be my feeling.
Yep, understood. And I think what we talked about was Ernie could certainly attend, right? Because you guys would know what's going to be on the agenda, what's needed, and he certainly could come with you. But in terms of the voting membership and in terms of setting the expectation of what the school committee is looking for, it would basically be, this is all flowing through the facilities subcommittee. So as things are being presented, projects are being identified, there's a clear, it's coming back here. It's not, who's doing what.
The way I envision it is very similar to the way it's always worked. I mean, the facility subcommittee and then to the full committee. Like the facility subcommittee would recommend warrant articles in capital projects to the full school committee, and then the full school committee votes on them. That would be the progression in my mind.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, and you said Ernie, but we also have technology in the capital budget. So I don't want to assign Ernie as the liaison. I'd rather have Mike as liaison and invite the people as needed. So if I want George to go because he's the expert on playgrounds now, he's going. Ernie on facilities or George on technology, something like that. So that's why we're looking at the school committee liaison being this person. And then as that agenda is driven, whether it be a building project or a technology project or something else we have in capital that is going to go there, that person can be invited to that. But yeah, you're right still. The subcommittee, the facility subcommittee is going to recommend to the school committee to present items for the warrant, but this is that capital committee now that's going to start in October.
Chris?
It's been my experience on the facilities subcommittee in the past, that some of these things are hard to follow. There's a timeline and it goes back and, so to have the chair of the facilities subcommittee attend these capital meetings and as, to create that seamless kind of flow, I think that makes perfect sense, and I'd advocate for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new committee, so I think the hope is we can try it, and if we need to adjust in the future or something needs to change, but that was the thinking as to the why behind it, was to try and create a nice cohesion between what's happening with the school capital projects, and specifically those in facilities, and what's happening on the Whitman side, and keep those two groups lockstep, and then use the school committee certainly as needed. So that was the thinking. Yes, Mike?
Chris, I agree with you, but I also think we need to visit, as I talked to Jeff today and I talked to the Hanson committee, I think we also might want to think of how we're going to tie that into also.
Yeah,
probably
so
not tonight, but
that's a good point. So I think not to be lost on us is that I think the reason this one came up, it was something that had been discussed at town meeting, and I think there was some confusion, at least on our part as well, as to what are we trying to do and who's trying to do what. So that's why we met with Lincoln. We can certainly
circle back with Hanson.
We can certainly, and I think you have the contact information for who's doing it. And I think we follow the same process, right? So it would be the same thing, and we may even want to, if they want a couple members, we can kind of figure out how that would work. But that's the thinking. So I'd be looking for a motion to support the chair or we'd be looking for a motion to support the chair of the facilities subcommittee as the liaison to the capital committee for the next year.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yeah,
And the ultimate vote for capital items comes to the full committee.
absolutely.
And,
This is just communication. That's
Yep.
all we're trying to hopefully achieve here
right,
between the two.
right, so Mike would be communicating what we are discussing and what we are considering to put forward and so forth, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Unanimous. Excellent. Okay, where are we? I know that was number 13. Subcommittee 14. See, actually, the numbers are kind of helpful.
Yeah, they are.
Or I just convinced myself. that-
I'm on paperwork all over the
Just like
place.
where we go. All right, so subcommittee. So again, these are follow-up items from things we talked about in the past. We need to formalize some subcommittees. Some we've had in the past, some we haven't. Again, based upon what we've looked at in the past, I would prefer that we get everyone involved, and based upon the number of committees, we're probably targeting around 3 members per committee. Certainly, that doesn't have to be hard, fast. I think if people want to be involved, we can make it work. Other than negotiations, which I think we do absolutely need to have no more than 3. We've talked about that in the past, but the other ones, we can kind of work through. What I was hoping we could do with the committee's support here is we need a warrant subcommittee, we need a policy subcommittee, we need a negotiation subcommittee, and then as we got there, I'd like to talk about a budget subcommittee, an early childhood education subcommittee, and a related arts subcommittee. So we have some folks that are already on various committees, whether it's the building project or facilities, et cetera. I've already done negotiations, all that good stuff. So what I'd like to do is just kind of take them one at a time and just start with warrant. So everyone clear on what we're doing so far?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Are these all the people that want to do warrant?
Yep.
Okay, we have David, Dawn, Steve, and Beth. And I think probably 4 is fine. I think what we were looking to clarify is that we would require 2 signatures, not 4, right? So,
You too.
2, is that?
3, I thought.
It used to be 3.
used to be
In
3.
COVID, we went back to 1.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to discuss. Thank you, Fred. So this is what I wanted to discuss with the
When
team.
I was on school committee before, it was 3.
It was 3.
Yeah.
We've done it with 1. So my point was, hey, can we talk about having 2 out of 4? If the committee wants to stick with 3 out of 4, we can stick with 3 out of 4.
I believe there's a legal reference that requires 3 unless the committee empowers 1 person. I believe.
Okay, so we wouldn't even be able to do the 1.
So I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was
You
COVID
can
only.
empower 1 person.
COVID.
No, back up.
sorry.
The law changed. The committee could decide to have 1 person.
Oh, okay.
Pre-COVID, the committee chose 3, and then when we hit COVID, it was like, okay, just the chair.
But the question becomes, what happens post-COVID?
Correct.
rules? Okay, so how about this? Let's appoint the 4, and then we'll take away if we can do 3 or 2 are required. Right now, we'll probably err on the side of caution. Let's have 3 signatures, so Michelle will need 3 in the warrant that are posted. So we'll need the 3 signatures, and then if we can clarify between now and the next meeting, we'll just ask Andy, or Fred finds it even before we adjourn tonight.
We'll clarify.
We can clarify. But so for me to clarify that, we are appointing, I want to make sure I got that right. Warrant, where's warrant? I got warrant. Dawn, help me out here. We said Dawn, David,
Beth,
Beth,
And Steve.
and Steve. Great. Got it. Okay,
I'm new, so I'm not on any committee, so.
that's okay.
You will be.
Negotiation. So this will be for A through, oh, I'm sorry, policy. Thank you. Sorry. Policy. So again, looking for at least. All right, so we have Hillary, and we have Chris. Anyone else want to do policy?
Michelle.
Michelle, I'm sorry, Michelle.
Oh, the dream team.
the robust related arts team.
Just kidding.
I think I get some makeup work to do.
So we have Michelle. Sorry, I made a nice little fancy matrix so I could keep track. And then Michelle will keep track as well. So you have those 3, so it'll be,
Michelle, Chris,
Michelle.
and Hillary.
yes? What's that? Chris Springer? Yes. Michelle, you're good? I have a little.
Interruption, all routes should head back to the Performing Arts Center. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Dismiss.
All right, negotiations A through D. So this would be for the upcoming contract.
Oh, I'll do it, no. Just being
So I'd like to,
silly. Just being
I'd like to
silly.
do this one. Who else would like to do this one? Mike? Fred? Okay. And Fred, you're good, because I know the building committee is going to be a lot. You're good?
I know, that's, I'm not gonna chew off too much, but
Okay.
that one,
And then,
that one will be easy, right?
so it's Fred, Mike, and Chris. This Chris. Mike Jones. And you. Okay, and then budget. So I want to talk a little bit about this one first. Budget, we had talked about a number of things throughout the course of the year. So what I was hoping to get out of the budget committee, subcommittee, was first and foremost, it will not be a policy-making oriented committee. So if it's, hey, I want to be on the budget subcommittee to figure out what's in the budget, this is not the committee for you, or subcommittee for you, right? So we already figured out what the strategic priorities are. I was hoping that we could use this budget subcommittee to help filter out some of what John has. So, for example, hey, I got these crazy new 3 reports. What do you think? Can I get some feedback in advance of the school committee meeting? It would be to perhaps spitball and think through this 5-year plan. Maybe before we go into the budget presentation cycle, again, it's a sounding board to provide some feedback. So I don't view this as a subcommittee that would need to meet all the time, but it should be a subcommittee that's hopefully providing a little bit more clarity around some of our budget stuff. So that's what that's what I was hoping to get out of that. Again, I can't be more clear. This is not I'm going to be on the budget subcommittee and figure out what's on what's in the budget. That's what we're all going to do together. So I'll be looking for some volunteers, and this is another one that I want to do as well. So David, myself, anyone else brave enough to start? Steve? And you don't have to.
That's it.
But you're
So
welcome.
I'm at 4 now.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so
huh?
budget is, David, Chris, and Steve. Okay, yes,
Pertaining to the warrant subcommittee?
yeah, you find it?
I did find it. Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16A, relevant to regional school districts. The regional school district is still governed by provision, MGL, Chapter 71, Section 16A, that states, in relevant part as follows. The committee may establish a subcommittee of no less than 3 members for the purpose of signing payroll warrants and accounts payable warrants to allow for the release of checks, provided, however, that such subcommittee shall make available to the committee at the next meeting a record of such actions of such subcommittee. This provision of law will govern warrant matters absent a charter or special act of the contract.
So there you go. So thank you for the clarification. So we have 4, we just need
You have
3.
4, you're fine.
So Michelle, we'll kind of go back to that old process of, I know it can be a little bit of a pain. I think the one piece I'd ask, because it's, for those of you that experienced in the past, please, when she sends it out, I think you can probably, Michelle, I don't think we're violating any open meeting laws by saying, hey, I can do it today. That way everyone knows we don't want to be wasting people's time.
We just come up and sign, right?
You just come up and sign.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what we
just
need
like
to
we
do
did
is,
before.
it needs to happen promptly, so we have
Yeah.
sometimes issues with 2 extremes. One, no one ever shows up to sign it. Or we get everyone and then, the 4th person signs up and it's like, oh, I shows up and they don't have to sign it. So
Yeah.
we'll just kind of work it through that way.
Can I just add, Chris?
Yeah.
The issues that we've had, these are payroll warrants, and we need to, when it goes out, there needs to be, we can't be calling on a Friday afternoon saying, we're leaving at 4, we need to get this payroll warrant done. So that's why we went to, when we had to 1 person, it was a little bit easier, but if there's 4, and we can get a commitment to make sure these warrants, and sometimes it's twice a week, as things go out. So it is a commitment, but if you're available, I think, we'll text you, we'll do whatever. Michelle's very good at prompting, saying, a warrant's coming out today, are you available? We're here till 5 o'clock tonight, or whatever.
Yeah.
That was just going to be my follow-up question. What are the hours of availability for us to come in?
Usually it's 8 to 4. I mean, we can extend it if need be, but we're here, the office is open 8 to 4. Correct, Michelle? 8 to 4? I mean, we're...
Typically, all the warrants are on the same week as payroll week, so you'd be doing both of them together. You only did it every week in the summertime, but I think you're going back to 2 weeks, and Mr. Stanley can speak to that.
It'll be every 2 weeks, correct, John? Yeah.
Okay.
If we could find out if A, the warrant can be scanned and shared electronically, and B, never received an answer from an attorney, will they accept an electronic signature?
I thought we looked at this before.
We tried.
Oh, no, I thought we
But
got
we never got an
I
answer.
thought we got an email back that said we could not.
I don't remember. We asked the question, I don't remember.
I don't remember. But
So
yeah,
we'll ask the question.
I mean, it's-
Because
I remember this vividly. I remember when you said it, and I was on the committee. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. Great idea. And I'm almost positive it got looked at, and they were like, no.
Yeah, because it's attached to documentation.
Right.
You can't separate the two. And I don't know if someone really wants to scan in every single invoice
I'm sure
and
they
piece of
scanned it
paper.
anyways. I'm sure it's already scanned into a file.
I don't think everything is.
But let's try it. Let's try it with the 4.
Yeah, go from there.
Need the 3, and then let's revisit. So Michelle, just give us feedback as we go. If it's not working, we can try and figure it
Yeah.
out, and then
Yeah.
I can look at
I mean, on
it.
behalf of the department, I
Yeah.
think it's 4 o'clock, and I'm not, the scanning would also have to be redaction of student names and things for that.
Right, secure
For bills and
email, how
things
to
like
send
that.
it, all that stuff.
Well, those get redacted anyways.
Okay.
At least,
On behalf of the department, I mean, they have a full-time job to do, so I ask that it stays 8 to 4.
So let's try the process as we have it. Let's see if we can get folks to commit to doing it. I can certainly do it if we can't get people here during those times.
I think we're good.
But we'll make
We've got 4 people, it's good.
Okay. So we have budget, ECE, which is, early childhood education. I'm already abbreviating. Anyone that would like to continue to do that? David?
Stay with it.
Dawn? Okay, got 2. Good. And basically that's just, again, I should have said this before, but this is a clearinghouse to continue to work. Now administration has some work to do in terms of finding some information. This will be following through. And then same with last related arts, it would be kind of a follow through of continuing the conversation. Chris and Hillary. So we got Don and David on ECE and Chris and Hillary on related art. So you're going to see it through to the end.
I can do related arts too. Are you okay with the 2?
No, it's 3, so great.
Okay.
Love to have you.
Yep.
Awesome. Sorry, I didn't see you over.
Can I ask a clarifying?
Band back together, right?
Yeah, so clarifying question though. The expectation of who's gonna be taking minutes, because my minute taker can't be at every one of these. And the clarification of who, as administrators, are gonna be committed to every one of these. We can judge, like I assume John's gonna meet with budget. I'm gonna be doing negotiations 4 times. I jump on this one, but we gotta make sure that that's clear, because when policy meets, if we're meeting 5 times a week, or even a month, we've now extended multiple committees, which I think is good, but Michelle's not available. I also have building committee going on as well. So we need to either have our own minute taker, either a recorder, somebody's doing that. So we need to just have some boundaries for us.
Yeah, so a couple things. So I think in formulating the subcommittees, we have them and now we can use them, but we're going to have to build some ground rules. So to your point, Michelle and some other folks can't be everywhere all the time taking them. So I would suggest, or minutes. So I would suggest we should have a minute taker. The subcommittees can kind of figure that out, other than the standing ones that we already have. But when we're talking about like budget or ECE, the new ones, related arts, those we should have a minute taker. So I'm hoping first order of business with those committees meet, they can just take turns. They're minutes, they don't have to be, perfect. We won't be as good as Michelle, but we should be able to handle it. I think in terms of now that the committees are formed, we also need to kind of walk before we run in terms of some of what we're doing. So, for example, the budget subcommittee should probably think about, and I'm going to defer to the administration on this, but we probably should sit down and kind of talk through what some of that would look like. Related arts, and ECE, I think, is going to wait a little bit in terms of things to happen. And then policy does need to meet right away, sooner rather than later. So the policy subcommittee, in addition to the comment that Don had made earlier in terms of aligning to the handbook, one of the things we talked about as a group, and we identified previously, is that we need to come up with a policy to address contract approvals by the school committee in terms of applicable employees and who's in scope and who isn't. So we had previously as a committee talked it was in an executive session, but I don't think I'm violating anything by saying, this kind of flowed here. We said in the policy subcommittee, we need to have a clear policy, right? So we identified that, there's a lack of clarity in terms of what the committee approves, who approves what, and some of that. So I think that I would have the ask of the policy subcommittee kind of getting together and starting to look at a policy as it pertains to what employment contracts are approved by the school committee, what isn't, the parameters and all that goes with it. So who is on the policy subcommittee?
Michelle, Hillary, and Chris.
So that might be something if you folks could meet sooner rather than later in terms of kind of creating that policy, because we're going to have to look at that.
Chris, to be honest, I'm not 100% clear on what your ask is.
So the policy, basically, we're going to try and look at a policy in terms of, is it what and how does the school committee approve contracts other than that for the superintendent?
Right.
So does the school committee have to approve? Sorry for not, I should have.
No, I'm with you now. Yep.
But for the public, right? So does the school committee have to approve, and how do they approve business manager? Do they approve assistant superintendent? Where is the scope? What does it look like? So the ask is to have them draft something, and then we'll talk about it, right? We got to come up with something in terms of how we're going to do that and make sure that it's clear.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Yes.
There is a legal reference that we're required to approve the contract of the business manager.
Correct.
I don't know that we've done so as of yet.
Correct. So I think that's something that I think my plan is to address that next week, but there's some other things we got to go through. Okay. So I think it starts with, let's have a policy that clearly articulates what's required and make sure we're doing it. Makes sense? And then we can kind of work through the motions.
But we know that's a legal requirement. Is there anything else that's legally required? Perhaps we should consult with our attorney just to make sure that we're covering everything.
It's that MGL. It's that MGL, Fred. It's that MGL that has the requirements for who's what. But again, even outside of the legal requirement, I think one of the things we talked about is there's some grayness around, does the school committee have to vote the assistant super contract? Where do we draw the line? So we should have that clear so we're not guessing in terms of, and the public is clear on what is in scope, what isn't. Let's put it in a policy and work through that. So this group can do the draft, we can talk about it as a school committee, and then we can get it going. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Where are we?
15.
15, so I'm
You
going
gotta turn your page back over.
Building use.
for time.
Do you want to?
I'll table, I was going to pass over, ask him to pass over 15,
Pass over.
16,
Good thing, because I can't find 15.
15 and 16, and you can go right to subcommittee reports.
15, 6, we don't have to vote the surplus?
No, I can do that next meeting. Okay. Just, because we have executive session.
Yeah, we do.
That one I pulled up.
We're at that 2 hours.
Chris, after 8.
Okay.
So, and we can pass.
All right, so subcommittee reports. Can we just get a report from the facility? So I've got facility subcommittee first.
Yep.
We met.
Yep, we met today.
Yeah, we went to playgrounds. There were some issues in a report that came out, and they were been addressed, and we're going to push forward for maybe potentially putting forward 2 new playgrounds in with them. So,
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Am I able to provide a little feedback or comment on, or on?
So I think we're trying to do the report from the subcommittee, but I would encourage you to get in touch with the chair if there's any feedback and make sure that if he needs to provide that in his next report, he does. Does that work? Is that okay?
I can do that.
Okay. Negotiations, is there anything we want to report on here?
I just want to say that we're talking about it in executive session.
yeah.
That's fine. And Whitman Middle School Building Committee report.
We met yesterday. We have sent a letter to all the original bidders for our owner's project manager that every bid was being rescinded or rejected due to a procedural error by the district's administration. So that letter has gone out. We had an MSBA give a presentation yesterday on the process again. We do have a new timeline. September 29th, our RFS should appear in the Central Register. Wednesday, October 6th, will be a non-mandatory informational meeting and a walkthrough at the middle school for all prospective bidders. Friday, October 8th is the last day for prospective bidders to have their email questions answered. October 13th, there'll be the responses due by 1 p.m. And then we'll have our committee, or our subcommittee, I should say, start working on the prospective bidders and will be appearing in front of MSBA beginning of December.
And the RFS was approved.
And the RFS was approved, and if there are any updates to that, the building committee will get back together and we'll go over them before everything's finalized.
Great. We have a date set for the next building committee meeting.
Yeah, date is
September 7th.
Fantastic. And same thing, if any committee member wants more information, less information, clarification, please let Fred know and he can share it in his next report. But thank you for that, Fred. All right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, though, there was an item on discuss open positions. Do you have feedback, Fred, on that, from that meeting?
I'm sorry?
Oh, on the agenda, did you?
Randy LaMattina was voted as the vice chair.
What about open positions? Did you?
Open positions, we started to discuss. We felt to leave things as they are right now.
Okay.
There's no mandate of having X amount of members, fewer or more, and the committee's functioning very well. We seem to have a good input, good mix right now.
Okay.
Take it from there.
Okay. Okay, excellent. We have 2 more items. So next meeting, do you have a preference?
I prefer the 8th.
Is that okay with everyone?
No,
No.
No?
I won't be.
The meeting's scheduled for the 15th, so we could do the 15th.
I have the, yeah, because I thought it was the 15th,
No, the
so
15th is
I
fine.
made arrangements.
Can you do the
for-
15th?
Oh, yeah.
Can everyone else do the 15th?
It's a standing meeting.
Then let's leave it as.
Yeah, that was a
Great.
standing
It's a standing
meeting.
meeting.
That's
So-
why we talked through these meetings, so thank you. All right, and then, yes, Chris?
Can I make a quick comment before we go to executive session?
Yes, before.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to thank you guys for the way you guys have worked together to present all this stuff and how efficient it is. And I love the fact that I don't think we got anything but a unanimous vote tonight, right? And the fact that we, you know,
There's a lot of votes.
the areas of focus are huge, right? And we worked together in the summer, and now we have a clear vision for us as a committee in terms of what we're going to focus. It's huge. It's great, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, I think the committee's everyone's doing a lot of work, so I hope that's not lost on the folks that watch these meetings. So, all right. So we will be going into an executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Frank Brown's invoice, WHEA negotiations, and a non-union personnel contract. The only vote we will be taking when we come out of executive session will be to adjourn. Can I get a motion?
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
And that is a roll call vote. So Steve,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
David. Yes. Chris, yes. Mike,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Beth.
Yes.
Yes.
Fred. Okay, we're in executive session.